Hello, today we plan to introduce you to a new model. The video information that we will present will probably be indispensable for people who love power, beauty and oligarchy. Please watch. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share your thoughts. Generally speaking, most folks wouldn't dare drive a Lamborghini sports car off-road unless they were playing Forza Horizon 5, and even then some might hesitate. And yet, Lamborghini has been working on a Sterrato version of its Huracán supercar built specifically for the dirt to strip that pensiveness from real-world operators. This exciting development has been a long time coming. We drove an early version of the Huracán Sterrato back in 2019 and our own Jonny Lieberman seemed to be quite taken with what he called Lamborghini's space buggy. Since then, Lamborghini has continued to tease the Sterrato to keep potential buyers, and dreamers, on the hook, and now it has peeled the cover off its rugged supercar in its full, production-ready glory. If you're wondering why Lamborghini would create an off-road version of a Huracán at all, we would first recommend that you go to dictionary.com and look up the word fun. Secondly, as Lamborghini's chief technical officer, Reuven Moore, tells it, the team that developed the Urus SUV realized most owners would never drive the vehicle fast off-road despite it being so fun, so after discussing the idea over dinner, they set out to build one specifically for that one and only purpose. After returning from off-road development work on what would become the Urus, Moore, then in charge of final vehicle validation before start of production, plucked an Huracán Evo test car out of the line to the crusher and went to work. The result was the Sterrato, which very roughly translates to dirt road. We did some rapid prototyping, he told Motor Trend. We did the suspension setup, then we tested the car internally. We took the car to Sweden, we took the car everywhere, and every time that someone was driving the car, they were really jumping out and with a big smile. There was no really project start because at this time the company had different priorities, but then when Lamborghini CEO, Mr. Winkelmann came back, the people also were showing him the concept cars and the demo cars, and he said, well, but this is a cool car, why we never did this, and he decided to do it. Moore is very clear, the Sterrato isn't meant to be a do-anything off-roader. It's not meant for climbing rocks or even going off the beaten track into the wilderness. It's basically a Lamborghini rally car, designed to go as fast as possible on low-grip surfaces like dirt and gravel roads, on the sand, and in the snow. The mission of the car is clearly to transfer the super sport feeling that we have with the Huracán STO or with the racecar-oriented setup on the track. Moore said, that you can have this fun on the gravel, on the snow, so on the low-grip surfaces. The off-road capability of this car is better than some people might think, but at the end of the day, the real mission of this car is to have the driving fun. As Lieberman's report confirms, driving fun was achieved. The car he drove, though, was a rough prototype and things have changed a bit for the production model. The biggest difference is in the wheelbase. While the prototype had its front axle pushed forward 3 inches to make room for the big wheels and tires. That's no longer the case. Moore's team worked hard to retain the Huracán's proportions, and as a result the Sterrato's wheelbase is now only 0.35 inch longer than a standard Huracán. Doing so allowed the team to retain most of the suspension components rather than design new ones. One notable exception is the dampers, which are still active magneto-rheological units, but have been reworked for 25% greater wheel travel in front and 35% greater travel in the rear and have new bump stops designed for harder impacts. The damping has been softened considerably through changes to the control software, and works in concert with springs that are longer and, softer. Ground clearance increases by 1.7 inches to just under 7 inches. That's about 2 inches less than a Subaru Crosstrek and not far off of a typical sedan, but again, this car is meant for dirt roads, not dirt trails. As such, the underside of the car remains covered in aluminum skid plates to protect from debris and bottoming out. Steel, the preferred material for off-road trucks and SUVs, proved too heavy for Lamborghini's liking and messed with the car's handling. Aluminum is lighter and works well enough. The skid plate likely to get the hardest workout is under the car's nose. Even with the lift, the Sterrato's approach angle is only a hair better than a Huracán Evo's, though the departure angle improves by roughly 6.5 degrees, so at least you can worry less about dragging the rear diffuser. Lamborghini hasn't given a breakover angle, but it's bound to be better than a standard Huracán, though still not good for actually climbing over obstacles because, again, that isn't the point. In fact, Moore says the car's ride height was determined more by the team's suspension tuning goals than outright off-road capability. Raise the center of gravity too much and the springs and dampers would have to be stiffened up to control body roll, hurting its ride and handling off-road. What's more, the team still wanted the Sterrato to drive like a Lamborghini on the street and paved track, so it couldn't be too tall or too soft there, nor too low or too stiff on dirt. At the end of the day, he said, The car could have for sure more off-road capabilities and it's limited by the ground clearance, but the current clearance is defined by the capability on the track. All the clearance in the world won't help if you're trying to drive on dirt with street tires, nor will typical off-road tires do you much good on a racetrack. While the prototype used one-off Pirellis, the production car uses a specially designed Bridgestone Dueler all-terrain tire that's good up to 160 miles per hour. To make room for beefier 40-section sidewalls, they're mounted on 19-inch wheels, down from 20 inches on an Evo. Because they stick out 1.1 inches farther in front and 1.3 inches farther in the rear, plastic fender flares were necessary to keep everything legal. Despite the heavier tires and body armor, Moore says the Sterrato is only about 22 pounds heavier than an Evo, putting it right around 3,700 pounds. Again, beefier chassis or suspension bits weren't necessary given the tame dirt capabilities Lamborghini targeted, so those structures proved more than robust enough as is. Moore says the engineers have beat the hell out of the car to ensure it can handle seriously high-speed off-roading without braking. Speaking of, the Sterrato retains the Evo's massive 15-inch front and 14-inch rear carbon ceramic brake rotors clamped by 6-piston front and 4-piston rear calipers. Stopping distance on pavement will no doubt increase due to the off-road tire tread and rubber compound, but Lamborghini doesn't have an estimate on how much. Also, because those big tread blocks squirm around more when you turn, Lamborghini removed the Evo's rear steering system. Moore says it just made the steering feel artificial. That's not to say the production Sterrato doesn't like to turn like the prototype did. Lieberman reported that car would begin to oversteer the moment you turned into a corner like a rally car and responded beautifully to a Scandinavian flick. Moore, who was a drifter in a past life, assures us that's still the case. I'm in love with cars that turn in only by off-throttling because it's from the initiation point of view the easiest and the most elegant way that you can do it, Moore said. But for sure it's also a compromise always because driving fast on the highway the car has to be safe, especially for the driver that is not expecting this. But it's more or less on the same level, the agility and off-throttle behavior like in the prototype car. Getting it to do that required some software calibration in the Lamborghini Dinamica Veicolo Integrata, Lamborghini Dynamic Vehicle Integration, or LDVI, system that governs the car's front-rear torque distribution, traction and stability control, and more. For starters, it's the first car equipped with LDVI and all-wheel drive, but no rear steering, so the program had to account for that, as well as the higher center of gravity, softer suspension, and off-road tires. More than that, though, torque distribution has to be recalibrated for low-grip surfaces. Moore says when driving off-road the system will now send more or less torque to the front axle based on how much throttle you're giving it, the steering angle, whether or not the car is already in a slide, and more. Under lighter throttle and steering inputs, it'll send more torque to the rear to help initiate a drift, while under heavier throttle and steering inputs it'll send more torque to the front to help control the drift and pull the car out of the corner. While the front axle can handle up to 80% of the engine's output, Moore says it never gets that high and, unlike other Huracans, there's no fixed ratio in any drive mode. The computer is constantly adjusting the front-rear bias based on what the car is doing. That said, it's far less aggressive in the default Strada, Street, mode than in Sport or Rally, the latter of which replaces Corsa. Sport dials back the traction and stability control systems for track performance, while Rally really dials them back so you can drive like a rally driver. Moore says the electronic nannies are designed so you won't feel them intervening if you drive the car smoothly, unless you're completely out of control and they need to step in to prevent or de-escalate a crash. As with the Evo, the Sterrato uses a mechanical limited slip rear differential the computer has to account for but can't control. Elsewhere in the code, engineers had to adjust the transmission's automatic shift point slightly to account for the larger diameter tires and the engine calibration had to change to accommodate an entirely new intake system. On the prototype, the team had tried to protect the side air intakes as much as possible from dust, mud, rocks, and debris, but found it a losing battle. For the production car, the side intakes are blocked off entirely and the engine gets its air from the roof-mounted scoop. Moore says this didn't make a big difference in the car's aerodynamics, but it did restrict engine output slightly. The 5.2-liter V10 now makes 610 horsepower instead of 630, while torque remains unchanged at 442 pound-feet. Blocking off the side intakes entirely also keeps the engine compartment much cleaner in combination with the underbody armor by effectively sealing off the engine compartment everywhere but the top. Despite the power drop and tire-limited top speed, Lamborghini says the Sterrato will still hit 60 miles per hour in 3.4 seconds. Quick, no doubt, though if that number holds it'll be 0.9 seconds slower than the last Huracán Evo AWD we tested. Moving the engine air intake to the roof is partially responsible for the production Sterrato not having a roof-mounted light bar like the concept had. The main reason, though, is because it was just too noisy. Roof racks and light bars tend to create a lot of wind noise in the cabin, which Moore's team found unacceptable. The production car does still get the nose-mounted rally lights, though, for legal reasons, they'll come with covers and are only meant to be used off-road. If you still want to put things on the roof, the production Sterrato does still have cargo rails, and they're functional. Moore says they'll hold upwards of 175 pounds. Inside the car, the touchscreen infotainment system has been updated with new graphics and additional features specific to the car's off-road mission. There's now an inclinometer, a pitch and roll display, a steering angle indicator, a compass, and the navigation now shows your exact GPS coordinates. The car is also outfitted with a telemetry recording system so you can analyze your laps and a video recorder so you can relive your greatest moments behind the wheel. Otherwise, the interior is mostly the same, though accented in Alcantara Verde Sterrato, green artificial suede leather. The Lamborghini Huracán Sterrato will go into production in February 2023. Only 1,063 cars will be built, which based on typical Huracán production numbers means it'll only be around for a couple model years at most. Lamborghini isn't saying what it'll cost yet, but you can bet it'll be more than the Huracán's $248,295 starting price. Also, it's probably already sold out. Still, if it drives anything like the prototype, it'll be worth it for those who can afford it. If you want to go to the Rubicon Trail, you would not use this car, Moore said. It's another mission. It's inspired by the rally stages on gravel. We had this car also in Sweden every time when we did a winter test. And I can tell you we always took a Sterrato with us, not only because it was needed but also because we like. And I can tell you if you have the naturally aspirated sound close to the rev limiter in some, let me say, forest conditions, really driving fast, sliding away, this is a feeling that, I don't know any other product that can offer this, to be honest. Well, we do, sort of. Porsche's just revealed 911 Dakar, a similarly lifted sports car. Do we sense a trend? Thank you for watching our video information till the end. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a comment. Thank you.